The slap came before I could even speak. My head snapped to the side, my ears ringing, and my mother's voice tore through the room like thunder. "You shame me!" She screamed, her hands trembling not from weakness, but from rage. I tasted blood, metallic and warm, and for a moment, I thought she might actually kill me. The worst part? I wasn't even sure I didn't deserve it. Her eyes were wild, her nostrils flared, and in that instant, I could feel every ounce of disappointment she had ever felt toward me condensed into this moment. I stood there, frozen, my back pressed against the dining room wall, the framed family photo rattling from the force of her second slap. My chest heaved. And then she said it, "You were with him." It wasn't a question, my stomach dropped. Somehow, even though she had no proof, at least I thought she didn't. Their words cut through me as if she'd been there, watching me, every single time I crossed that line. I opened my mouth to deny it, but the sound that came out was a cracked whisper. Don't you dare lie to me," she shouted, stepping forward, her fingers curling like claws. I don't know why my mind chose that exact moment to flash back, not to the beginning of the fight, not even to when things between us started to fall apart, but to the first time I met him. It was a humid Thursday evening. I was sitting outside my college campus cafe, pretending to study but really scrolling aimlessly through my phone. That's when I noticed him, tall, sharp-featured, dressed in a way that said he didn't care about looking perfect but somehow did anyway. He caught me staring. "Your coffee's gonna get cold," he said as he passed my table. I blinked. "What?" He smirked, pointing at the untouched latte in front of me. "Coffee. You haven't sipped it once in the past 20 minutes. Either it's terrible, or you're too distracted." I don't remember what I said after that, but I remember the way he looked at me. Like I was the most interesting person in the room. Like I mattered. His name was Raghav. And over the next few weeks, he went from being a stranger I occasionally bumped into to someone who somehow knew everything about me, favorite books, the way I hated loud chewing, even the fact that I bit the inside of my cheek when I was nervous. And yet, for all the comfort he brought me, there was one detail I never let myself forget: he wasn't single. That should have been the end of it. It should have stopped me from replying to his late-night texts, from meeting him just for coffee, from leaning in too close during conversations. But it didn't. Because every time my phone lit up with his name, I felt chosen. I wish I could tell you it was an innocent crush, that I didn't mean for it to go where it went. But that would be a lie. And if I've learned anything from standing here now with my mother's rage scorching me, it's that lies have a way of crawling back to you, no matter how deep you bury them. The first time we crossed that invisible line, it wasn't planned. It was raining, one of those heavy Mumbai rains that turn streets into rivers. We ducked into a closed bookstore for shelter, laughing as water dripped from our hair. He brushed a strand of mine back behind my ear, his fingers lingering just a second too long. "You know this is wrong," he murmured. "I know," I whispered back, and then he kissed me. I should have pulled away. I didn't. From that day forward, we weren't just two people who liked talking. We were something else, something dangerous, thrilling, and impossible to explain to anyone. Especially my mother, who believed in strict lines between right and wrong. My mother, who still reminded me of the day my father left us, muttering about women who destroy families. My mother, who had no idea her own daughter was now one of them. I tried to keep Raghav in my home life in separate worlds, like two colors that would never mix if I kept them far enough apart. But worlds have a way of bleeding into each other when you're not careful. It started small late-night texts I forgot to delete, phone calls I took in the bathroom with the water running, that faint smell of his cologne that clung to my scarf no matter how many times I washed it. My mother noticed things. She always noticed things. "You've been smiling a lot lately," she said one morning over breakfast, her eyes sharp even as she sipped her tea. I shrugged, poking at my toast. "Just college stuff." She didn't press then, but her gaze lingered on me for a beat too long. Weeks passed. I kept telling myself I could end it whenever I wanted. That I was still in control. But the truth? I was addicted. Addicted to his voice in the middle of the night, to the way he looked at me like no one else existed, to the danger of it all. The day everything began to unravel was a Sunday. I was at his apartment, curled up on his couch, the afternoon sunlight slanting across the room. He was making tea when his phone buzzed on the coffee table. A name flashed on the screen: Ankita. His wife. He didn't answer. He didn't even look surprised. "You should go," he said quietly. I wanted to argue, but something in his tone told me this wasn't the time. I left without touching the tea. When I got home, my mother was sitting on the sofa. My phone in her hand. I called you, she said. My phone died. I lied instantly. She tilted her head. Interesting. Because I saw it light up just now. And I saw the messages. My blood went cold. I took a step forward, reaching for the phone, but she pulled it back. Her eyes scanned the screen, and with each line she read, her face grew harder. Who is he? She asked, her voice low, almost calm, and that calm was more terrifying than her shouting. I tried to think of something, anything, but my mind was a jumble of excuses that all sounded pathetic even to me. It's not. That's when she stood up. The phone dropped to the sofa. Her palm connected with my face before I even processed the movement. The crack echoed in the room. You're seeing a married man, she said, her voice trembling now not from weakness, but from something deeper. Hurt. Betrayal. Rage. Ma, please. Her hand came down again. And again. My cheek burned, tears blurring my vision. Somewhere in between, she grabbed my shoulders, shaking me so hard I felt my teeth clack together. Do you know what you've done? Do you know what people will say about you? About us? I wanted to scream that I didn't care what people thought. I wanted to tell her that for once in my life, I felt alive. But the words stuck in my throat, tangled in guilt and fear. Her grip tightened on my shoulders until my collarbone ached. I could smell her perfume, sharp and floral, the same scent she'd worn since I was a kid. Only now it was mixed with something else, sweat and fury. You think this is love? She spat. It's filth. He's using you. I shook my head, more out of instinct than conviction. It's not like that. Her hand flew again, connecting with the other side of my face this time. My ears rang. My eyes watered. My knees felt weak, but she didn't let me fall. She held me upright, almost as if she wanted me fully conscious for every blow. You're just like your father, she hissed. The words hit harder than her hands. I flinched, a part of me still that little girl in the kitchen doorway, watching my father pack his suitcase while my mother cried into her dupatta. Ma, please, I whispered, my voice breaking. But she wasn't listening. She was somewhere else years back, watching her own marriage collapse, watching herself be humiliated. And now, somehow, I was the enemy in her mind. The next hit wasn't a slap, it was a fist. My lips split, the metallic taste of blood flooding my mouth. I gasped, stumbling back into the wall. The family photo above rattled again, and this time, it fell, shattering on the floor. That sound snapped something in both of us. She lunged forward, grabbing my arm and shaking me so violently my head snapped back and forth. I clawed at her wrist, trying to break free, but she was stronger than I'd ever imagined. Her nails dug into my skin, and I knew they'd leave marks. You have ruined everything. She screamed, her voice raw now. Do you know what people will call you? A homewrecker. A whore. The words seared through me. I wanted to fight back, to tell her that she didn't know Raghav like I did, that he loved me, that this wasn't just some cheap fling. But my throat felt like it was closing. And the truth, the ugly, heavy truth, was that I wasn't even sure I believed that anymore. Her hand rose again, and I ducked this time, stumbling toward the doorway. She caught my hair, yanking me back so hard my neck screamed in pain. I cried out, but it only seemed to fuel her anger. You will not walk out of this house until you end it with him. She shouted. Somewhere in the back of my mind, I thought about Raghav's smile, the way his voice softened when he said my name. And I wondered, would he fight for me like I was fighting to breathe right now? Or would he just let me go? Her palm struck me one last time, hard enough to send me to the floor. The cool tile against my cheek felt almost merciful. I lay there, trembling, trying to steady my breathing. She stood over me, chest heaving, tears streaming down her own face now. You will end it, she said again, but softer this time. And then she turned and walked away, leaving me crumpled in the doorway, surrounded by shattered glass and the echoes of her rage. The silence after she left was deafening. No TV in the background, no clatter of dishes in the kitchen, no ticking clock, just my own uneven breathing and the faint hum of the ceiling fan. I stayed on the floor for what felt like hours, though it was probably only minutes. My cheek throbbed in rhythm with my heartbeat, and when I reached up to touch it, I winced. My fingertips came away wet, not just with blood from my lip, but from tears I hadn't even realized were still falling. The shards of the family photo glinted on the tile beside me. My father's face stared back at me from one broken piece, his smile forever frozen in that moment when we'd still been a family. My mother's image was in another shard, separated from his. I didn't see myself in any of the larger pieces. It felt almost symbolic. Dragging myself upright, I stumbled into the bathroom. The mirror didn't lie, my lower lip was split and swollen, my left cheek a raw red with the faint outline of her fingers. My eyes were bloodshot, my hair a tangled mess from where she'd pulled it. I turned on the tap and splashed cold water on my face, the sting making me suck in a sharp breath. It didn't wash away the marks. It never does. I wanted to call Raghav. I wanted to hear his voice, to tell him what happened, to have him say he'd fix it, that he'd make it all okay. But even as my hand reached for my phone, something inside me hesitated. Would he actually care? Or would he just tell me to be more careful next time? When I finally picked up the phone, I didn't call him. I just stared at his name in my contacts, my thumb hovering over it like it was a button that could blow up my life, in a way. It already had. I sank onto the edge of my bed, pulling my knees to my chest. The house was still quiet, but I knew my mother was in her room, probably pacing, probably replaying the scene just like I was. I wondered if she felt guilty. I wondered if she even cared that she'd hit me, or if in her mind, she'd done the only thing she could to save me, but what she didn't understand was that I didn't want saving. I wanted understanding. I wanted someone to see Mehmet as a mistake, not as a disgrace, but as a human being who had made a choice, however flawed it might be. When my phone buzzed, my heart leapt. I snatched it up, half expecting Raghav's name. But it wasn't him. It was a single text from my mother: "Dinner is on the table." Just like that. As if nothing had happened, I didn't go to the dining table right away. My body still ached in places I didn't want to name, and the idea of sitting across from her pretending everything was fine made my stomach twist. But the smell of food eventually pulled me from my room. When I walked into the dining area, she was already seated, serving herself dal as if the last hour hadn't happened. She didn't look up when I pulled out a chair. The only sound was the clink of spoons against plates. I forced myself to eat a little rice, though every movement of my jaw reminded me of the split in my lip. I caught her glancing at me once, but her expression was unreadable, neither apologetic nor triumphant, just blank. Halfway through the meal, she spoke, her tone flat. "I don't want to hear about him again. End it." I stared at my plate. "It's not that simple." Her hand paused midair, spoon hovering over her bowl. "It is," she said sharply. "You just don't want it to be." I wanted to argue, to tell her that Raghav wasn't just some man, that he meant something to me. But the memory of her hands on my face, the venom in her voice, made me swallow the words. We finished the rest of the meal in silence. Afterward, I went back to my room and lay on my bed, the ceiling fan spinning lazily above me. My phone was still on the nightstand, Raghav's name glowing faintly in the recent calls list. I wanted to reach for it, to hear him tell me this was worth the pain, but another thought crept in, an image of him, phone in hand, smiling at his wife the way he once smiled at me. The possibility that I was nothing more than an escape for him, a thrill. My mother's words echoed in my head. "He's using you." I didn't know if she was right, but I knew that something in me had shifted tonight. I rolled over, pulled the blanket up to my chin, and let the weight of everything press me into the mattress. Somewhere in the distance, I could hear the faint sounds of the neighborhood, the hum of traffic, the bark of a stray dog. Life going on, indifferent to the mess inside this house. I wondered if I would ever feel clean again. I woke before sunrise, my face pressed into the pillow, the faint throb of my cheek reminding me it hadn't been a dream. The room was still gray with early light, and for a moment, I just lay there, staring at the ceiling, feeling the weight of the day pressing down before it had even begun. When I finally sat up, my body felt heavier than it should have. My arms bore faint crescent marks from her nails. My hair was still knotted where she yanked it, and my lip had swollen enough that every breath seemed to tug at the cut. I moved quietly, not wanting to wake her, slipping into the bathroom to wash my face. Cold water helped a little, though the bruises beneath the skin felt like they had their own pulse. Back in my room, my phone lit up. Raghav, morning, beautiful. The two words sat on the screen like a stone in my stomach. My thumb hovered over the keyboard, and for a second, I considered replying with the truth: "My mother hit me because of you." But I didn't. Instead, I typed a simple morning and hit send. Almost instantly, the dots appeared. "Raghav, can I see you today?" 100 reasons not to came rushing in me: bruises, my mother's fury, my own swirling doubt, but the want was still there, stubborn and loud. Before I could answer, a knock sounded at my door. "Breakfast," my mother's voice called. When I opened it, she was standing there in her usual salwar kameez, her hair neatly tied back. Her eyes flicked over my face for the briefest second, then she stepped aside to let me pass. At the table, she poured tea without a word. We ate in a brittle silence, the clink of spoons like tiny hammers breaking the air. Halfway through, she spoke, eyes fixed on her plate. You'll come with me to the temple today. It wasn't a request, I nodded, because it was easier than fighting, but as I sipped my tea, my phone vibrated in my pocket again. I didn't need to check to know it was him. And I knew somehow, before the day was even halfway over, I would have to choose who to answer to. I kept my phone in my lap, hidden under the table, feeling it buzz like a pulse I couldn't ignore. My mother was still eating, methodically breaking her paratha into neat pieces, each movement slow, deliberate, as if control could be rebuilt through the small rituals of a morning meal. When she finished, she looked up. We leave in 30 minutes. I nodded again, but my mind was already somewhere else, somewhere in a quiet cafe with Raghav, somewhere away from the weight of her gaze. As soon as she went to her room, I pulled out my phone. Raghav, can you come by at noon? Just for a little while. I miss you. The words hit me harder than I wanted to admit. I could almost hear his voice, that low, warm tone that always made me feel like the only person in the room. My fingers hovered over the screen, typing, erasing, typing again. In the end, I sent, maybe. His reply came fast, Raghav, I'll be waiting. When I put my phone down, my chest felt tight. It wasn't just the risk of seeing him, it was the knowledge that if my mother found out, the storm from yesterday would feel like nothing compared to what would come next. I dressed quietly, choosing a plain salwar kameez, hoping the high collar would hide the faint shadow of bruising on my neck. In the mirror, I avoided looking directly at my own eyes. By the time we stepped out, the heat was already pressing down. The streets were alive with the sounds of vendors setting up stalls, children running to school, the temple bell echoing faintly in the distance. We walked side by side, my mother's hand clutching her prayer beads. She didn't speak. I didn't either. But with every step closer to the temple, I felt my resolve slipping. I knew Raghav was expecting me, and the thought of him waiting, scanning the crowd for my face, pulled at me like a thread I couldn't stop unraveling. When we reached the temple gates, she paused, looking at me for the first time that morning. Come inside. And that was the moment. I could follow her through those gates, let the incense and chants drown out everything for a little while. Or I could walk away, down the street, toward him. My heart pounded as I took a step forward, just not in her direction. Her voice cut through the air like a whip. Where are you going? I turned, trying to sound casual. I'll be back in a bit. Her face hardened instantly. Don't you dare. But I was already moving. I didn't look back as I walked, though I could feel her eyes on my back like a heat I couldn't escape. My steps were quick, my pulse faster. By the time I reached the corner where the temple road spilled into the market street, the noise of vendors and rickshaw horns had swallowed the silence between us. Raghav's apartment wasn't far. I'd been there enough times to know exactly which lanes to cut through, which turns to take to avoid the main road. Still, every step felt heavier, as if the weight of my mother's stare was stitched into my clothes. When I reached his building, he was already waiting outside, leaning casually against the gate, sunglasses on, phone in hand. When he saw me, his face lit up. There you are. For a moment, I almost forgot everything else. He pulled me into a quick hug, and the familiar scent of his cologne wrapped around me. But when he pulled back, his eyes flicked over my face. What happened to your lip? I froze. It's nothing. He raised an eyebrow. Doesn't look like nothing. I looked away. Just an argument with my mom. He didn't press, but his hand slid into mine as we walked inside. His flat was cool and dim, the curtains drawn. It felt like stepping into another world, one where the bruises on my face and the echo of my mother's voice didn't exist. But even here, I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd just crossed an invisible line. We sat on the couch, and he started talking about something at work, but my mind kept drifting to the temple gates, to the look in my mother's eyes, to the family photo shattered on the floor. Hey, he said, touching my knee lightly. You're quiet. Everything okay? I nodded automatically, though the truth was tangled inside me. Part of me wanted to tell him everything that my mother knew, that she'd hit me, that she thought he was using me. That she might be right. Instead, I said, I just needed to see you. His smile was soft, but there was something distracted in it, like his thoughts were already somewhere else. And in that moment, I wondered if I'd just risked everything for a man who might never risk anything for me. I didn't stay long at Raghav's. I told myself it was because my mother would notice my absence, but deep down, I knew it was because I couldn't stand the way my mind kept drifting while he talked, the way the bruises on my skin seemed louder in my head than his voice in the room. When I stepped back into the street, the afternoon sun was harsher than I remembered. It felt like it was exposing me, making me visible to everyone. The woman who had just defied her mother to see a man who didn't belong to her. The walk home felt longer than usual. Every footstep closer to the house was a step toward something inevitable. When I reached the gate, it was unlocked. My stomach sank. Inside, the living room was silent except for the faint ticking of the wall clock. My mother was sitting on the sofa, hands folded in her lap. Her prayer beads rested on the table in front of her, but she wasn't touching them. She was just staring straight ahead, her jaw tight. I closed the door softly. "Ma." She didn't look at me. "You went to him." It wasn't a question, I swallowed. Her head snapped toward me, and in her eyes was something worse than rage. It was disappointment. "Do you even hear yourself? You threw away your faith, your family, and your dignity. For what?" My throat felt tight. "It's not like that, it is exactly like that." Her voice was sharp, but there was a crack in it now, a tremor that made it land heavier. "I raised you alone. I fought for you. I gave up everything so you could stand on your own feet. And you choose to become the very thing that destroyed us." Her words hit harder than her hands ever could. "I'm not him," I whispered, but even as I said it, the memory of Raghav's wife's name flashing on his phone came back like a ghost. She leaned back, exhaling slowly, as if letting go of something she'd been holding on to for years. "You will regret this, one day. Maybe not now, maybe not tomorrow. But when you do, don't come running back to me." The room was so still after that, I could hear the sound of my own heartbeat. I wanted to tell her she was wrong. I wanted to tell her love was worth the risk. But the words wouldn't come, because for the first time since I met Raghav, I wasn't entirely sure I believed it myself. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the faint shadow of the ceiling fan, my phone on the pillow beside me. Every time it buzzed, I snatched it up, hoping it was him. It usually was, but his messages felt different. Shorter. Distracted, Raghav, busy right now. Talk later. I stared at the screen. Later used to mean an hour. Now it felt like a whole day, or longer. I tried not to let it get to me. Maybe he really was busy. Maybe I was just too sensitive after the fight with my mother. But when he didn't call before bed, I lay there in the dark, hearing her voice in my head. "He's using you." I pushed the thought away, but it kept circling back. The next afternoon, I went to see him again. He answered the door wearing the same smile, but it didn't reach his eyes. His phone was on the table, screen down. He never used to do that. We sat together, but the conversation felt thinner somehow. He talked about work, about some problem with a client, but his gaze kept flicking toward the phone as if he was waiting for something. Or someone. At one point, it buzzed, and he reached for it so quickly, I barely had time to notice the name flashing across the screen. "Ankita." My chest tightened. "You're going to answer that?" He hesitated, then shrugged. "I have to." I sat there, listening to him slip into another voice, softer, warmer as he spoke to her. My nails dug into my palm. It wasn't jealousy, not exactly. It was the sudden, sharp realization that there was a part of him I would never have. When he hung up, I forced a smile. "Everything okay?" "Yeah," he said, brushing it off. "She just needed something." And that was it. No explanation. No apology. Just a wall I wasn't allowed to climb. That night, when I got home, I didn't tell my mother where I'd been. She didn't ask. She didn't even look at me when I passed her in the hallway. But I could feel the space between us widening, like a crack in the floor that grew deeper every time I stepped over it. It started with small things: a missed call he didn't return, a text that went unanswered until the next morning, a sudden meeting he forgot to tell me about. I told myself it was nothing. That people got busy, that relationships had quiet days. But the truth was, it wasn't just quiet, it felt hollow. One evening, I called him. He didn't pick up. 10 minutes later, I tried again. Still nothing. I stared at my phone, the little green call icon glowing like a dare. My heart was beating too fast, my throat dry. I told myself I'd try one last time, and when I did, a woman's voice answered. "Hello?" It wasn't Ankita. I didn't know who it was. But the sound of her voice, casual, comfortable, like she had every right to be there, made my skin prickle. I hung up without saying a word. That night, I didn't sleep. My mother's voice replayed in my head like a broken tape. "He's using you. You will regret this." The next morning, when I walked into the kitchen, she was making tea. She didn't look up when she said, "You've been crying." I froze in the doorway. "I'm fine." She finally turned, her eyes landing on me with a mixture of exhaustion and something else I couldn't name. "You think I hate you," she said quietly. "But I don't. I hate what you're letting yourself become." Her words lodged themselves under my skin, and for the first time, I didn't immediately want to push them out. It was raining again when I found out. Not the warm summer drizzle I liked, but the heavy, angry kind that made the streets flood and the air smell like rust. I was in my room, scrolling aimlessly, when a message from an unknown number lit up my screen. "You don't know me, but you need to stop seeing my husband." My breath caught. The display photo was of a woman smiling. Wearing a red sari, her head tilted against Raghav's shoulder. His arm was around her, his smile easy and familiar. "Ankita," I didn't reply. I just stared at the picture, my thumb trembling over the glass. A few seconds later, another message came, "You're not the first." My stomach twisted. I wanted to throw the phone, to delete the messages, to pretend they didn't exist. Instead, I sat there reading them over and over, each word hammering the truth deeper into me. Raghav wasn't just splitting his life between me and her. He'd done this before. And he'd probably do it again. When I finally called him, my voice was shaking. "She messaged me." There was a pause on the other end, the kind that told me he wasn't surprised, just calculating his next move. "What did she say?" "That I'm not the first." Silence. "Then, you shouldn't believe her." I laughed, sharp, humorless. "That's all you have to say?" He sighed, the sound more irritated than remorseful. "She's just trying to scare you." Something in me cracked then. Not all at once, but in a slow, quiet way, like fabric fraying until it finally gives. When I hung up, I didn't cry. I just sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the rain sliding down the window, thinking about my mother's face the day she found out, the way her voice had broken when she called me "just like your father," and for the first time, I wondered if she had been right all along. I didn't go to class the next day. Instead, I walked through the drizzle to Raghav's apartment, not to see him but to end it. He opened the door with that same easy smile, like nothing had happened. "Hey, you're early, I'm done," I said. The smile slipped, but only a little. "Don't be dramatic." I stepped inside, shutting the door behind me. "Your wife messaged me." And I believe her. For the first time, something flickered across his face, not guilt, not shame, but annoyance. "She's trying to mess with your head. Don't let her win." I laughed, but it came out bitter. "If this is winning, I don't want it." He reached for me, but I stepped back. "You never loved me. I was just convenient." "Don't say that," he said, too quickly. "I care about you." "Care isn't enough," I replied, my voice steady now. "Not when you've already given the best parts of yourself to someone else." I didn't wait for him to answer. I just walked out, my sandals splashing through the shallow rainwater pooling in the street. By the time I got home, my mother was at the dining table, peeling vegetables. She didn't look up when I came in. "I ended it," I said quietly. Her hands stilled for a second, then resumed their work. "Good." I stood there, waiting for something more: relief, forgiveness, even a lecture. But she just kept peeling, the steady scrape of the knife filling the silence. Finally, she said, "You can't change what you've done. But you can decide who you want to be after." For the first time in weeks, her voice wasn't sharp. I sat down across from her. She didn't take my hand, didn't tell me she understood, but she also didn't push me away. And in the quiet of that small kitchen, with the smell of rain drifting through the open window, I realized that maybe this was the closest we'd get to starting over. That night, I lay in bed staring at the same ceiling I'd stared at the night after she hit me. The bruises were fading now, but they still ached when I pressed them, a dull reminder of the day everything changed. I thought about that first slap, the shock of it. The way the world seemed to tilt. Back then, I'd told myself I didn't deserve it, or maybe that I did, I couldn't decide. Now, after everything, I understood it differently. It wasn't just anger. It was fear. Fear that I'd end up broken in the same way she had been. Fear that I'd mistake the rush of danger for love, and lose myself to someone who would never truly be mine. I still hated the way she'd done it. The violence, the words, the shame. But I could see, now, that under all of it, she was trying in her own flawed, painful way to pull me back from an edge she knew too well. Outside, the rain had stopped, leaving the air heavy and still. Somewhere in the distance, a temple bell rang. I closed my eyes and let the sound wash over me. I wasn't ready to forgive her. Not yet, but maybe, someday, I would, and maybe, someday, I'd forgive myself, too.